Hey everybody, it's Randy Ray here at the Literate Texan at Driftwood Ranch, and I'm coming to you this morning with a new tag. I'm co-hosting an event called Spring into Adventure 2024, and I made my announcement video for this yesterday. So far, nobody has created a tag for this particular event, so I thought it would be fun to start with the Spring into Adventure 2024 tag. So this is more or less official since I'm actually a co-host for this event. But it consists of 10 prompts. You can answer any or all of them, I don't care. Just do whatever you think is going to be the most fun for you. But first, let's talk about, and just very, very briefly, what adventure literature is. And so when I Google the words adventure literature, the first result in Google is from Wikipedia. It says adventure fiction, and there's a definition of the genre from critic Don Damasa, and I may or may not be pronouncing that correctly. I can barely pronounce Randy Ray correctly anymore. But here's his definition. An adventure is an event or series of events that happens outside the course of the protagonist's ordinary life, usually accompanied by danger and often by physical action. Adventure stories almost always move quickly, and the pace of the plot is at least as important as characterization, setting, and other elements of the creative work. And so then he goes on to argue that A Tale of Two Cities is an adventure novel because the protagonists are in constant danger of being either imprisoned or killed, but Great Expectations is not, because Pip's encounter with the convict is an adventure, but that's the only scene that constitutes an adventure. So I don't know, you can argue about whether or not that's accurate or not, but it just gives us a starting point for what an adventure novel or a piece of adventure literature is, which might make it easier to answer some of these prompts. And we will start, as usual, with number 1. What is the best adventure book you've ever read? Okay, so obviously that's subjective as hell. But my favorite adventure book would be The Hobbit. Not The Lord of the Rings, but The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I suspect that a lot of the people, if not most of the people who watch my channel, have already read The Hobbit. But it certainly constitutes they're even really clear they're going on an adventure in the very first chapter. And they're also very clear that Bilbo Baggins doesn't like to go on adventures because they can make you late for dinner, among other problems. So, but I just think it's a wonderful book. It's obviously aimed more at children than The Lord of the Rings, but it holds plenty of treasures for adults who are reading it also. But what's the best adventure book you've ever read? Number 2, what is the newest, most recently published adventure book that you've read? That's kind of a tough one for me. I don't read a lot of really new books, and a lot of the really new books that I read, I wouldn't necessarily call adventure books, but I'm going to take a look at Goodreads over here because it shows what I've read in order. And if I read something recent, it's probably going to be there somewhere under my books. It's thinking. See, for the event so far, I've read The Star's My Destination and The Real Cool Killers, but those were published a long time ago. Neither one of those are particularly new, and I'll have videos about those too soon. But this book is Full of Spiders by David Wong. It's probably the most recent adventure novel that I've read, and it's an adventure horror novel. And I don't know exactly what year that was published, but it was fairly recently. It was recommended to me by a lady friend whom I'm very fond of. Okay, it was published way back in 2012, but that's recent enough to suit me. And then my next prompt, number 3, is what is the oldest adventure book that you've read? And in keeping with number 2, which is most recently published, the oldest would be the least recently published, or the oldest published one. And I don't know, it'd probably be something really, really old, something like it'd probably be the Aeneid. But I've been meaning to read Gilgamesh, and I haven't gotten to it yet, although some booktuber wants to do that as a buddy read with me, so I think that'd be a lot of fun. Number 4, who's your favorite adventure book author? You know, I'm still going to have to say J.R.R. Tolkien, although Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would be close, and not necessarily for his Sherlock Holmes novels. He wrote all kinds of short stories that qualified as adventure fiction, and also a book called The Lost World, which has dinosaurs. You know, if it's got dinosaurs in it, it's probably adventure fiction. Also, Robert E. Howard. I have to mention Robert E. Howard. Number 5, what's your favorite film adaptation of an adventure book? You know, I came up with these questions, but I didn't really think too much about the answers before I started. So I'm not sure exactly. You know, the Indiana Jones books are great adventure books. The Indiana Jones movies are great movies, but they weren't adapted from books. They're just, you know, they came around wholesale. And that's also true of the Star Wars movies. You know, they're great adventure stories, but they weren't based on any particular book. So, I don't know. Maybe The Getaway? I really love the film adaptation of The Getaway, which stars Steve McQueen, but it's a shame that they left out the last chapter there. So yeah, that would probably be my favorite film adaptation of an adventure book. You know, notwithstanding the animated version of The Hobbit from the 70s that Rankin and Bass made. Don't get me started on the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies because they're terrible. Number 6, who's your favorite adventure book character? Well, okay, so I'm going to go back to the Bagginses from The Hobbit. Although Bilbo is not my favorite adventure book character. My actual favorite adventure book character is Frodo Baggins from The Lord of the Rings. What a great character. You know, definitely had more, definitely just a great character throughout the book, you know, and if you consider all 3 volumes, one book, which Tolkien did, you know, throughout, you know, he demonstrates over and over again his concern for other people over himself. Number 7, do you prefer fiction or nonfiction adventure books? Now, I think most people have a overarching preference between fiction and nonfiction, but that might change based on genre. I don't know. I know Steve Donahue prefers nonfiction to fiction. I tend to prefer fiction to nonfiction. That's just me. And that applies to adventure fiction as well as to regular fiction. Number 8, do you consider yourself adventurous? Why or why not? I do not consider myself adventurous, not anymore. When I was younger, I liked to travel. I was willing to do just about anything because I usually felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof because I had quite a bit of whiskey in my belly most of the time. Now that I've gotten older and my health is not what it was, you know, I'm a lot less adventurous. I stay home a lot. I'm certainly not as apt to travel. The last time I took a trip was in 2010. Although it was a great trip, I went to the Turner Classic Movie Festival. But you know, I hope to become a little more adventurous as I get a little healthier. Number 9, what's your favorite genre to combine with an adventure? Most adventure novels don't fall into just one category of adventure. They usually fall into multiple categories. Like The Hobbit, which I mentioned earlier, is an adventure novel, but it's also a fantasy novel. The Real Cool Killers by Chester Himes, which I read for the first week of the event, is a crime novel as well as an adventure novel. The Star's My Destination, which I've also read as part of this event, is a science fiction novel as well as an adventure novel. And then, of course, this book Full of Spiders that I talked about earlier in this list is an adventure horror novel. So for me, I think adventure blends really well with fantasy. A lot of that might have to do with the fact that I fell in love with fantasy books when I was very, very young. And I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing growing up. I'm a bona fide nerd, if y'all hadn't noticed that about me. And that leads me directly into question number 10 or prompt number 10. Have you or do you play adventure-themed games of any kind? That might include video games, it might include board games, it might include tabletop role-playing games. My answer is yes. I'm an avid gamer. Although, as I've gotten older, I tend to prefer board games over tabletop role-playing games. And then I haven't played video games in years. They're just too addictive and too much of a time sink. And, I've got social media for that. Okay, so prompt number 11, tag 6 of your favorite booktubers. Obviously, all of my co-hosts are tagged for this, and they'll be in the description down below. But I would also like to tag the following people. Number 1, Steve Donahue. He claims nobody ever tags him. Well, here you are, Steve. You're being tagged. Number 2, Big Al Does Booktube. He's great. I love his videos. If he does this tag, I'll be thrilled. MJ. I'm tagging MJ. She's marvelous too. Criminale, I'm going to tag. He does crime, horror, that sort of thing, which obviously melds with adventure quite a bit. I'm also tagging James Ricala and tagging Please Read Your Book. I've got more videos coming up soon. This is a bonus Tag Tuesday video for me, so there's another Tag Tuesday video I'm going to do today. And, until I see you in the next video, stay sexy, folks.